used to think the worst thing that could happen to a parent was losing sight of your child in a crowd. I had done it once, when my son was 4. We were in a supermarket, and he walked around the end of an aisle while I was comparing prices on cereal. He was gone for maybe 10 seconds, maybe less. I still remember how my chest tightened. I remember saying his name once, then again louder, and the second time my voice cracked enough that a woman near the freezer doors looked over at me. Then he came back around the corner holding a box of crackers with a cartoon dinosaur on it. He asked if we could get them. That was it. Nothing happened. That became important later. The nothing. The way nothing can be used as proof. Evan did not act scared. Marla did not ask to see the bedrooms. She did not ask about locks or schedules or who picked Caleb up from school. She sat where I could see her and drank half a cup of coffee. She complimented the curtains, even though they were cheap. She asked if Caleb had always drawn so much. She seemed like the kind of woman who had learned to be gentle because life had not been gentle with her. At one point, Caleb came out holding a plastic bin of toy animals and asked if Evan could have the duplicate zebra because he did not need 2. I told him that was up to him. Evan looked at Marla first. She nodded. He took the zebra and held it carefully in both hands. "Thank you," he said. His voice was so quiet I almost did not hear him. Later, I would think about that zebra. I would wonder whether it stayed in Evan's room. I would wonder if it was still there when the police came. I would wonder if small kindnesses meant anything in a house like that. I paid for the groceries and took him home. But I lay awake that night thinking about those few seconds and how fast my mind had filled in the worst possible thing. That was before I learned that your mind can never go far enough. My son's name was Caleb. He was 7 when this started. He had brown hair that never stayed flat, even after a bath. He was missing one of his front teeth, so his smile had a gap in it. He liked drawing machines. Not cars or planes exactly, but things with pipes and levers and buttons. Sometimes he would show me a page and explain what everything did. This button made toast. This one launched the toast. This one turned the toast into a bird. He had a serious way of explaining nonsense that made it hard not to laugh. His mother left when he was 3. I don't mean she died. I don't mean anything dramatic. She just left. There was another man for a while, I think. Then there was nobody. She called twice the first year and once the second. After that, nothing. I stopped telling Caleb she might call. I worked at a warehouse outside town. Not good money, but steady enough. I loaded trucks, checked inventory, fixed broken pallets when someone asked me to. My back hurt most days, but I got used to it. Caleb went to school, then to an after-school program until I could pick him up. We ate simple dinners, pasta, eggs, chicken when it was on sale. On weekends, if the weather was decent, I took him to the park because it was free, and he could run himself tired. I was lonely, but not in a way I talked about. I had my son. That was enough most of the time. I did not date. I did not bring people around him. I did not drink much. I kept a clean house because it made me feel less like I was failing. I paid rent late a few times, but I paid it. I went to parent meetings. I bought birthday cupcakes for his class. I sat with him through fevers. I learned to cut his hair badly and then better. The park where we met them was a few blocks from our apartment. It had 2 swing sets, a basketball court with cracked paint, and a play structure shaped like a wooden fort. Parents sat on benches around it and watched their kids climb and shout. Most of us knew each other by sight. We did not always talk, but we knew whose child belonged to who. The boy showed up on a Saturday in spring. He was about Caleb's age, maybe a little smaller. Blonde hair, pale skin, thin arms. He wore a green rain jacket even though it was not raining. I noticed him because he stood near the slide for a long time without playing. He watched Caleb build a tunnel in the sand under the climbing wall. Caleb noticed him too. "Do you want to help?" he asked. The boy looked toward the benches before answering. I followed his eyes and saw a woman sitting by herself. She was reading a book, or pretending to. She had dark hair tied back and a long gray coat. She looked up, smiled at the boy, and nodded. The boy crouched beside Caleb. His name was Evan. They played for almost an hour. I kept checking the woman, the way parents do. She kept to herself, but she looked normal. Tired, maybe. Not strange. When Caleb and Evan ran to the swings, she walked over and stood near me. "Your boy is sweet," she said. "Thanks. Yours too." She smiled. "He's shy at first." "Caleb isn't. He'll talk to a tree if he thinks it's listening." She laughed at that, and it sounded real. Her name was Marla. Her husband was Joel. They lived in a blue house about 10 minutes away by car, in one of the older neighborhoods near the creek. She said they had moved there from another county not long ago. Evan was homeschooled, which explained why I had never seen him around school. I remember that I liked her. Not in any romantic way. Just liked her. She seemed calm. She asked normal questions. How old was Caleb? What school did he go to? Had we lived here long? She did not pry about his mother. When Caleb tripped and scraped his palm, she pulled a small pack of wipes from her bag before I even reached mine. When we left, Caleb asked if Evan could come over sometime. I said maybe. I told him we did not invite people we had just met. He made a face, but accepted it. On the walk home, he kept talking about Evan. Evan had a dinosaur book. Evan knew how to whistle through his teeth. Evan had never been to Caleb's school because his mom taught him at home. Evan did not like loud noises. Evan had a green jacket because it was his lucky jacket. I listened and nodded and held his hand at the crosswalk. Caleb was usually quick to make friends, but he was also quick to forget them. He could play with a kid for an hour and never mention them again. This was different. He brought Evan up during dinner. He brought him up while brushing his teeth. He asked if being homeschooled meant you could wear pajamas all day. I told him I did not know. That night, after Caleb went to bed, I looked Marla up online. I did not find much. A private social media profile with a picture of a lake. A few comments under local yard sale posts. Nothing strange. Joel had no real online presence that I could find. I searched their last name with the town name and found nothing except an old listing for their house from when it had been sold. I remember feeling stupid while I did it, like I was being paranoid over a normal woman and her quiet kid. But that was part of being a single parent. You had to be suspicious enough to keep your child safe without turning into someone who saw danger in every kind face. That was the line I thought I was walking. I did not know the line had already been crossed. We saw them again the next weekend, then the weekend after that. Sometimes Marla came alone with Evan. Sometimes Joel came too. The second meeting felt even more ordinary than the first. Evan brought a small plastic shovel and gave it to Caleb without being asked. Caleb took it like it was nothing, because children do not understand the weight adults put on generosity. They built a wall in the sand and argued about whether it was a castle or a factory. Evan said castle. Caleb said factory. They solved it by making it both. Marla sat beside me on the bench that day. She had a travel mug and a paperback with a cracked spine. We talked about school lunches, rent, bad knees, the price of gas. She said Joel had a hard time keeping steady work because people always wanted cheap repairs, but complained when cheap repairs looked cheap. I told her I worked too many hours and still felt like I was one flat tire away from being ruined. She nodded like she understood exactly. That was one of the things that pulled me in. She seemed like a parent who was tired in the same ways I was tired. Joel came the third time. He stood more than he sat. He watched the park, not just the kids. At the time, I thought it was protective. He had a way of turning his head before anyone else did when a car pulled into the lot. He noticed when older boys started roughhousing near the little kids. Once he told them to knock it off, and they did. I liked that. I liked that there was another adult paying attention. I know how it sounds now. Every detail seems loaded because of what came later. But in those moments, I saw what I wanted to see. A strict father, a careful mother, a shy son, a family trying to settle into town. Joel was a big man, broad in the shoulders, with a shaved head and a short beard. He shook my hand like he knew how strong he was. He worked in home repair, he said. Odd jobs, roofs, drywall, plumbing. He had a slow way of speaking, like he was choosing not to say too much. I did not dislike him. I just did not get much from him. Evan and Caleb became friends quickly. Kids do that. They do not need much. Caleb liked Evan because Evan listened to his machine ideas. Evan liked Caleb because Caleb decided what they were doing and did not make him talk when he did not want to. The first play date happened at our apartment. I suggested it because I wanted control over the situation. Marla brought Evan over and stayed the whole time. I made coffee. The boys played in Caleb's room with blocks and toy cars. I kept the bedroom door open. Before they came, I cleaned more than I needed to. I scrubbed the sink, wiped the baseboards, shoved unpaid bills into a drawer. I told myself it was because I did not want another parent judging me. Really? I think I wanted to prove I was doing all right. Single fathers get praised for things mothers are expected to do without thanks. But they also get watched. People look for the missing piece. The dirty dishes, the short temper, the child with hair that has not been brushed. Caleb helped by moving clutter from one room to another, which he called cleaning. He taped 3 of his machine drawings to the bedroom door because he wanted Evan to see them right away. One was a machine that turned bad dreams into pancakes. I asked if it worked on adults too. He said adults would break it because adults always pressed buttons too hard. When the doorbell rang, he ran so fast he slipped in the hallway. Nothing happened. Marla looked around my apartment and said it was nice. I knew it was not nice, but it was clean. She told me Joel was always trying to start some project and leaving tools everywhere. She said she envied people who could keep things simple. She asked about Caleb's drawings on the fridge. She seemed interested in them. At one point, she stood in the doorway of Caleb's room and watched the boys. I remember her face, soft, sad in a way I thought was just the sadness adults carry. When they left, Caleb asked when he could go to Evan's house. I said we would see. I waited 2 more weeks. Looking back, that fact does not help me. It does not prove I was careful. It only proves that being careful is sometimes useless. The first time I took Caleb to their house, I stayed. The house was blue, like Marla said, with white trim and a porch that sagged a little on one side. There were flower pots near the steps, but nothing was planted in them. The yard was cut short. A basketball lay in the grass by the driveway. There was an old red pickup parked out front, and a white van with no side windows parked closer to the garage. Inside, the place smelled like lemon cleaner and something baked. Banana bread, I think. There were family photos in the hallway. Marla and Joel with Evan at a lake. Evan sitting on Joel's shoulders. Evan in a Halloween costume. Normal pictures. Normal walls. Normal mess near the door where shoes had been kicked off. They had a daughter too. I had not known that until then. Her name was Nora. She was older, maybe 12 or 13. Thin, with long hair and eyes that moved away from you if you looked too long. She came down the stairs when we arrived, said hello, and disappeared into the kitchen. She keeps to herself, Marla said. Age, I guess. Caleb and Evan played in the living room while the adults talked. Joel showed me a bookshelf he had built. Marla gave me coffee. Nora sat at the kitchen table doing a puzzle book. She did not speak unless someone spoke to her first. I stayed 2 hours. Nothing felt wrong enough to matter. There were things that could have felt wrong if I had been looking harder. The basement door in the hallway had a deadbolt on the outside, but Joel said he kept expensive tools down there, and Evan had almost fallen on the stairs when he was little. The explanation came before I asked. I noticed that. I noticed and let it go. The family dog was mentioned twice, but I never saw one. Marla said he was old and stayed in the mudroom. Later, she said he was at the vet. Caleb asked to see him, and she changed the subject so smoothly that I almost admired it. Maybe there had never been a dog. Maybe there had been one, and it had died. Maybe it mattered. Maybe it did not. Nora dropped a glass while we were there. It broke near the sink. Nobody shouted, but the room went still in a way that made the back of my neck tighten. Joel turned his head slowly. Marla told Nora it was all right. Accidents happened. Nora crouched to pick up the pieces, and her hands shook so badly Marla told her to leave it. I told myself some families were just tense. I told myself a lot of things. That is a sentence I have written down several times. Nothing felt wrong enough to matter. It feels like an excuse. It is an excuse. But it is also true. The second time I stayed again. The third time Marla dropped Evan at our place and left him with me for 3 hours. That made me feel better. People who want to hurt your child do not usually leave their own child with you, I thought. That is what I told myself. That was one of the dumb little ideas I used as proof. Evan was quiet but polite. He ate the sandwich I made him. He thanked me. He helped Caleb clean up without being asked. When Marla came to pick him up, she looked tired and grateful. After that, the play dates became routine. Routine is dangerous because it feels like evidence. The first time you do something, you pay attention. The second time, you pay attention a little less. By the 5th or 6th time, you have built a memory of safety around it, and that memory does the watching for you. You stop checking every door. You stop reading every face. You start thinking about laundry and dinner, and whether you remembered to buy toothpaste. Caleb began asking about Evan during the week. He drew machines for both of them, labeling buttons with their names. He wanted to build a real invention someday, and said Evan could be his assistant, because Evan was good at listening. I asked if Evan ever came up with his own ideas. Caleb shrugged and said Evan liked it better when someone told him what to do. That should have bothered me more. I asked Caleb once if he liked going to their house. Yeah, he said. Do you ever feel weird there? He looked up from his cereal. Weird how? I don't know. Scared. Uncomfortable. He made a face. No, why? No reason. Just checking. He went back to eating. Their basement smells funny. What kind of funny? Like pennies. I remember that. I remember it exactly. I also remember what I did with it. I said maybe it was from tools or old pipes. Then I told him to finish breakfast because we were late. I hate myself for that conversation more than almost any other. Not because it would have saved him for sure. I do not know that. But because he gave me something. Some small piece of truth in the plain way children do. And I covered it with an adult explanation. Because I needed the morning to keep moving. Sometimes I stayed. Sometimes I dropped Caleb off and came back later. It was not every week. Maybe twice a month. I had work, errands, laundry, all the ugly little things that eat a person's life. Their house felt like a safe place by then. I had sat at their table. I had used their bathroom. I had seen Joel kiss Evan on the top of the head. I had seen Marla correct Nora for putting a cup too close to the edge of the counter. It all looked like life. There were things I remember now that I did not hold on to then. Evan never came to our place after the first few times. There was always a reason. He had a cold. Marla had errands. Joel needed the car. It was easier if Caleb came there. I accepted that. Nora watched Caleb too much. Not in a mean way. More like she was trying to memorize him. Once when I picked Caleb up, his shirt was inside out. He said he spilled juice, and Marla washed it in the sink. It was still damp near the collar. I laughed and told him he was old enough to dress himself. He laughed too. Another time he said they had gone into the basement to see Joel's tools. I asked if Joel was there. Caleb said yes. He said the basement was big and smelled like metal. I told him not to touch tools. That was all. The last normal play date was on a Sunday. It had been raining for 2 days, and the park was all mud. Caleb was restless. He kept bouncing a rubber ball against the wall until I told him to stop. Then he bounced it on the floor until the downstairs neighbor hit their ceiling with something. Marla texted me that Evan was bored too, and asked if Caleb wanted to come over for a few hours. I hesitated, not because I had a reason, but because I was tired. I had worked late the night before. My hands were sore. My head felt full. Caleb stood beside me while I looked at the message. "Please," he said. I told him to get his jacket. I drove him over just after lunch. The rain had slowed to a mist. Caleb wore his blue jacket, the one with the torn cuff. He had his backpack with a sketchbook, 2 pencils, and a plastic robot he wanted to show Evan. Marla opened the door before we reached the porch. She smiled at Caleb and told him Evan was waiting. Joel was in the living room watching television with the sound low. Nora was on the stairs. "Pick him up around dinner?" Marla asked. "Sure," I said. Caleb hugged me in the doorway. He was getting older and did not always hug me in front of people, so I remember being pleased. "Be good," I told him. "I am good," he said. That was the last thing he said to me. I went home and did laundry. I cleaned the bathroom. I answered a work message. Around dinner, I drove back to the blue house. Joel opened the door. He looked surprised to see me. That was the first thing that hit wrong. Not fear, not guilt, just surprise, like he had forgotten I existed. "Here for Caleb," I said. Joel stared at me for half a second too long. "Yeah," he said. "Right. Come in." I stepped inside. The house was quiet. "Marla," he called. She came from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked at me, then at Joel. "Caleb's dad is here," Joel said. "I can see that," she said. She smiled, but it did not settle on her face. "Where is he?" I asked. Marla blinked. "He left." I thought I had heard wrong. "What do you mean he left?" "With you," she said. "No, I just got here." Joel's face changed then. He frowned, but it looked like he had decided to frown. "He said you were outside," Joel said. My mouth went dry. "What?" "He came downstairs with his bag and said you were here. He went out the front door." "When?" "A little while ago," Marla said. "How long is a little while?" "I don't know. 20 minutes?" I pushed past them and looked into the living room. Evan sat on the rug with a video game controller in his lap. The television was on, but the game was paused. He looked small. He did not look at me. "Where's Caleb?" I asked him. He shook his head. "When did he leave?" He looked at Marla. Joel stepped closer. "Hey, don't scare my kid." I turned on him. "My kid is missing." "He walked out," Joel said. "That's what happened." I searched the house. I did not ask permission. I went through the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedrooms upstairs. I opened closets. I called Caleb's name until my throat hurt. Nora stood in the hallway outside her room, arms crossed tight over her stomach. She looked sick. "Did you see him leave?" I asked her. She shook her head. Marla came up behind me. "You can't just go through our rooms." I looked at her and said, "Call the police." She did not move. I called them myself. The first officers arrived quickly, 2 of them, a man and a woman. They took down what I said. They talked to Marla and Joel. They talked to Evan and Nora separately, or said they did. They searched the house. They looked in the yard, the garage, the shed. Joel kept saying Caleb had left. Marla kept saying she was sorry, so sorry. She thought he was with me. Evan cried. Nora would not come out of her room after the first hour. I kept repeating the same things because I was afraid if I stopped, they would become less true. He was wearing a blue jacket. He had a gray backpack. He would not leave without me. He knew my car. He knew my voice. He did not like walking near the road. He was afraid of loose dogs. He would not just walk away. The female officer, Ramirez, wrote everything down. She had kind eyes, which made me angry for no good reason. Kind eyes did not find children. She asked when I had last seen Caleb. whether he had eaten, whether he had been upset with me, whether anyone might want to take him. The questions were necessary. I knew that. Each one still felt like an insult. At one point, I heard Joel in the next room say, "We have kids too. We would never." I stepped toward his voice before Officer Ramirez caught my arm. "Let us handle it," she said. I looked at her hand on my sleeve. "He's lying," I said. She did not argue. She also did not agree. More police came. Neighbors came outside and stood under umbrellas. Someone walked the creek bank with a flashlight. I drove the streets with an officer in the passenger seat, calling Caleb's name out the window like a maniac. We checked the park. We checked our apartment. We checked the school even though it was Sunday and locked. We checked behind stores, under stairs, between buildings. It rained harder after dark. By the next morning, his picture was online. Missing child, brown hair, 7 years old, last seen wearing a blue jacket and carrying a gray backpack. The police asked if there was a custody dispute. I told them his mother had been gone for years. They asked for her name anyway. They asked if Caleb had ever run away. I almost laughed in one officer's face. 7-year-olds do not run away from playdates and vanish. But some do, I guess. That is what people think when it is not their child. They searched the family's house again. They brought dogs. They took my statement again. They took my phone. They took Joel's phone and Marla's phone. They checked traffic cameras, doorbell cameras, store cameras. They talked to neighbors. One neighbor said he saw a child in a blue jacket walking near the road. Another said he did not. Someone reported seeing a boy at a gas station 2 towns over. It was not him. Someone else said a man had been watching kids near the park. That went nowhere. The search parties started organized and became desperate. Volunteers gathered in the school parking lot with raincoats, flashlights, coffee, and those orange vests people wear when they want to be useful. They walked fields and lines. They checked behind storage units. They knocked on doors. They called his name into empty places, as if he might be hiding and embarrassed. I joined the first search until a deputy pulled me aside and told me I was no good to anyone stumbling around without sleep. He meant it kindly. I told him to get away from me. Later I apologized or tried to. I do not remember if he heard me. A church put up a table with food. Someone printed hundreds of flyers. Caleb's school sent an email to parents. His teacher, Mrs. Larkin, called me and could barely speak. She told me Caleb had left a library book in his cubby and asked if I wanted her to bring it by. I said no too sharply. After I hung up, I cried because the book was about bridges, and he had been excited to show me a picture of one that opened in the middle. Every new lead raised me up just enough to drop me harder. A child seen near a bus stop. A backpack found by the river that turned out to be pink. A man in a dark coat who had offered candy to kids 3 years earlier and now lived in another state. People called because they wanted to help. People called because they wanted to be part of something. People called because fear makes everyone remember things wrong. I did not sleep. I stayed at the police station until they told me to go home. Then I sat in Caleb's room. His bed was unmade. His pajama shirt was on the floor. A drawing he had started was on his desk. It looked like a house with wheels and a chimney shaped like a hand. I held it for a long time without understanding what I was looking at. People brought food. My neighbor, Mrs. Pritchard, brought soup. My boss came by and said not to worry about work. A woman from Caleb's school hugged me in the hallway and cried into my shoulder. I hated all of them for being able to leave. On the third day, a detective named Hanley came to my apartment. He was polite, tired, careful. He sat at my kitchen table and told me they had found no evidence that Caleb was still in the house when I arrived. No blood, no signs of a struggle, no fibers or anything that meant anything. The dogs had not found a trail that held. The rain had washed everything out. He had a notebook, but he did not open it right away. He looked around my kitchen first, not openly searching, just taking in the room, the mug in the sink, the school calendar on the fridge, the drawing of the pancake machine still taped beside it. I wanted to tell him not to look at Caleb's things like they were already evidence from a life that had ended. "Do you believe them?" I asked before he could start. Hanley sighed through his nose. "It isn't about belief right now. It is for me." "I know. You keep saying that." He did open the notebook then. "I say it because there are things I can say and things I can't." That shut me up for a second. He told me they were checking the Voss family's history, previous addresses, employment, school records, medical records where they could get them. He said they had moved several times over the years, but not so often that it meant anything by itself. He said there were no prior charges, no child welfare reports that he could discuss, no known connection to Caleb before the park. Before the park. That phrase lodged in me. It made the park feel like a trap that had been waiting in plain daylight. "What about the family?" I asked. "We're looking at everyone." "That's not an answer." He looked at me for a while. "We don't have enough to hold them. They lied. We don't know that. My son did not walk out that door because I was outside. I wasn't outside." "I understand." "No, you don't." He rubbed his face. "Mr. Dale, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying we need evidence." I remember wanting to pick up the kitchen chair and smash it against the wall. Instead, I nodded like a reasonable person. After he left, I drove to the blue house. I parked across the street and watched it. The curtains were drawn. Joel's truck was in the driveway. The white van was gone. I sat there for almost an hour. At one point, Nora looked out from an upstairs window. She saw me. I know she did. The curtain fell shut. I came back the next day. And the next. On the 5th day, Detective Hanley told me to stop sitting outside their house. He said it could hurt the case. He said they had complained. I asked him if he thought I cared about their comfort. He said no, but he thought I should care about not getting arrested. I stopped parking there. I drove past instead. Days stretched out. The first rush of people faded. The flyers got wet and curled on telephone poles. Online strangers accused me of things. Some said the father always did it. Some said I had sold him. Some said it was the mother. Some said children wander off and fall into water. I learned that grief does not make you special. It just makes you raw, and people will still poke at you. There were reporters for a while. 2 came to my door. One left a card under the mat. One caught me outside and asked what I wanted people to know about Caleb. I said he liked pancakes and machines. Then I walked away because I could feel my face folding in on itself. That night I saw the clip online. My own voice sounded dull and far away. The headline said, "Grieving father pleads for help." I had not pleaded. I had barely spoken. Under the video, strangers argued about my body language. One said I looked guilty because I did not cry enough. Another said real grief was private. Another said I was probably on drugs. I read until I could not feel my hands. After that, I stopped looking. Then I looked again. Then I stopped. Grief makes you touch the hot stove just to prove it still burns. I kept going to the police. I kept calling. I kept checking places that had already been checked. I walked the creek until my shoes were ruined. I looked in dumpsters. I looked under bridges. I looked into every ditch along the road between my apartment and the blue house. I saw Caleb everywhere. A flash of blue in a store. A small hand in a passing car. A laugh from the next aisle. Each time my body moved before my mind caught up. Each time it was not him. The rain came back about 2 weeks after he disappeared. Not the soft rain from before. Heavy rain. Mean rain. The kind that beats the ground flat and fills gutters in minutes. I woke to it hitting the windows and knew I could not stay inside. I had spent the night on Caleb's floor again. My neck hurt. My mouth tasted like old coffee. I put on my boots and my coat and went out. I do not know why I went to the storm drains that day. Maybe because the creek had risen. Maybe because someone had told me once that the drainage system ran under half the older neighborhoods, including the one by the blue house. Maybe because I had run out of normal places to look. There was a large drain near the back of an empty lot behind a closed tire shop. I had passed it before. It was set into a concrete wall where runoff from the street poured into a channel that led toward the creek. The metal grate that should have covered it was bent outward at one corner. Teenagers probably used it, or homeless people, or animals. I do not know. Water rushed over my boots as I climbed down the muddy bank. The rain made it hard to see. I had a flashlight in my coat pocket and a small crowbar I kept in my trunk. I pulled at the grate until the bent corner gave enough for me to squeeze through sideways. Inside, the sound changed. The rain became a roar behind me. The tunnel was concrete, round, big enough to stand if I crouched. Water ran along the bottom, cold around my ankles. It smelled like mud, rot, and old metal. I walked with one hand on the wall. I called Caleb's name once. The tunnel threw it back at me in pieces. I kept going. There were side passages, some too small to enter, some large enough. I marked turns with chalk because I had seen people do that in movies, and because I was scared of getting lost. My flashlight beam jumped with my breathing. Trash floated past my boots. Leaves, plastic bottles, a dead rat, stiff and pale in the light. I almost turned back twice. Then I saw the backpack. It was caught on a broken piece of pipe near the edge of the water. Gray, one strap torn. A plastic robot keychain hanging from the zipper. I do not remember making a sound, but my throat hurt after. I grabbed it and pulled. It was heavy with water. Caleb's sketchbook was inside, swollen and ruined. The pages came apart when I touched them. 2 pencils, a snack wrapper, nothing else. I should have left then and called the police. That is what a good person would have done. That is what anyone reading this will think. But if you have never found your missing child's backpack in a storm drain, you do not know what you would do. I stood there holding it against my chest while water poured around my legs. My first clear thought was that he would be cold without it. It made no sense. The backpack was not a coat. He was not on a school trip. But my mind reached for the version of him that could still complain, still need something, still be waiting around a bend with wet socks and a scared face. I opened the ruined sketchbook because I needed to see his handwriting. Most pages were pulp. One corner held part of a drawing, a wheel, a row of square buttons, the letters C and E written at the top, for Caleb and Evan. Even then, even inside that place, he was still making something with the boy who had helped lead him there. I put the sketchbook back, because I could not leave even the scraps behind. I kept walking. The tunnel curved. The water got deeper for a while, then shallower. My flashlight caught something pale against the wall ahead. At first I thought it was a bundle of cloth. Then I saw the shoe, one of his sneakers, the left one, with the peeling strip of rubber near the toe. I had meant to buy him new ones. I went to my knees in the water. He was wedged in a shallow recess where a smaller pipe opened into the main tunnel. Someone had wrapped him in a torn tarp and tied it with cord, but the water had loosened part of it. His face was visible. I am not going to describe my son's face in detail. I have seen enough of it for everyone. I will say he had been hurt, not by the water, not by falling. He had been hurt by hands, by people who had time. His blue jacket was still on him. I touched his hair. I kept saying I was sorry. I said it over and over. I said it to him. I said it to the tunnel. I said it to whatever God I had stopped believing in years before. There are moments when a person breaks, but it does not look like breaking. I did not scream forever. I did not tear at my clothes. I did not pass out. I sat in dirty water with my dead son and spoke to him in a quiet voice. I told him I was there. I told him he was not alone. I told him I should have come sooner. Then I noticed something in his jacket pocket. It was not tucked deep. It was folded once and pushed in like someone wanted it found. My fingers were shaking so badly I almost dropped it into the water. It was a photograph, an instant print, the kind that develops in your hand. It was damp, but not destroyed. Someone had put it in a plastic sleeve first. I wiped it on my coat and held it under the flashlight. Caleb was in the picture. He was sitting on a chair in a room I did not recognize at first. His hands were tied to the arms. His face was swollen. One eye was half shut. His mouth was open like he had been crying. He was alive in the picture. That was the part that emptied me out. He was alive when they took it. Behind him stood Marla, Joel, Evan, and Nora. They were posing. Marla had one hand on Caleb's shoulder. Joel stood behind the chair, smiling faintly. Evan looked at the floor. Nora looked straight into the camera with tears on her face. They were all there. A family portrait with my son beaten in front of them. On the bottom white edge of the photo, someone had written a line of numbers and letters, not words. A code, maybe. Coordinates, maybe. I did not understand it then. I stared at it until the flashlight beam blurred. Who would do that? Who would be stupid enough to take a picture of themselves with the child they murdered and put it in his pocket? Who would dump him badly, not even far from town, not even buried? It made no sense unless sense was never the point. It felt like a ritual, a message, a signature, something sick people did because getting away with it was not enough. They needed the body found the right way. I put the photo inside my shirt to keep it dry. Then I kissed Caleb's forehead. I left him there. Before I did, I tried to pull him free. I should not have. I know that now. Evidence, crime scene, all the words that came later. In that moment, those words meant nothing. He was stuck in a place no child should be, and I wanted him out. The tarp tightened around the pipe, or the cord caught on something beneath the water. I pulled once, then stopped because his head shifted in a way I could not bear. That is the truth. I did not leave him because I was thinking clearly. I left him because I was too afraid to touch him wrong. I took off my coat and laid it over him as best I could, even though it was soaked and useless. Some part of me needed to cover him. Some part of me still thought like a father, tucking a blanket around his son's shoulders. I told him I would come back. I broke that promise almost as soon as I made it. I need to write that plainly. I left him there. I told myself I was going to get help, but that is not why I left. Not really. I left because something had started moving inside me that had nothing to do with help. Outside, the rain was still hard. I crawled out of the drain with the backpack under my coat and mud up to my knees. I stood in the empty lot and looked at the tire shop wall and the gray sky and the water running along the curb. I thought about calling Detective Hanley. I even took out my phone. My thumb hovered over his number. Then I looked at the photo again. Marla's hand on my son's shoulder. Joel's small smile. Evan staring down. Nora crying and still standing there. I got in my car. There was a handgun in a lockbox under my bed. My father had given it to me years ago, before Caleb was born. I kept it because I lived alone with a child, and because the world had always been the world. I had taken it to a range twice. I knew how it worked. I was not a gun person. I was not brave. I was not calm. I drove home, changed my soaking shirt, and opened the lockbox. I remember everything feeling simple by then. Not easy. Simple. The way a hallway is simple. You can only go forward or back. I put the gun in my coat pocket. I put the photo in my wallet. I took the backpack and left it in Caleb's room because I could not carry it anymore. Then I drove to the blue house. The rain had eased to a steady downpour. Water ran along the gutters. The flower pots by their porch were full of brown rainwater. Joel's truck was there. The white van was there too. I parked in front of the house. For a moment I sat with both hands on the wheel. My body was cold and tired. My son was in a sewer. My son was in a sewer because I had handed him to these people and driven away. That thought pushed me out of the car. Marla opened the door when I knocked. She looked surprised, then worried. She was good at faces. "David," she said, "are you okay?" I had not heard my first name in her voice since the police came. It made me want to vomit. "I wanted to say thank you," I said. The words came out flat, but she did not seem to notice. Or maybe she noticed and did not know what to do. "For what?" "For everything. For helping. For talking to the police. For Evan being Caleb's friend." Her eyes moved over my face. "You should come in. You're soaked." "I know." She stepped back. I entered the house. Joel was in the kitchen. Evan sat at the table with a bowl of cereal in front of him. Nora stood near the back door holding a dish towel. They all looked at me. I shut the front door behind me. "I found him," I said. Nobody spoke. Marla's face went loose. Joel took one step toward me. "Found who?" I pulled the photo from my wallet and held it up. Nora made a sound like she had been punched. That was all I needed. I shot Joel first. There was no speech. I had imagined one in the car without meaning to. I had imagined asking why. I had imagined making them say Caleb's name. I had imagined Joel falling to his knees. None of that happened because real violence does not wait for the shape you gave it in your head. My hand came up, and the sound filled the kitchen, and Joel went backward into the counter. The smell hit me after the second shot. Sharp, burned, wrong. Marla's scream cut off when she fell. Evan made a small animal noise under the table. Nora shouted something I could not understand. Maybe she said no. Maybe she said his name. Maybe she said mine. I have replayed it so many times that the memory has worn thin. I remember the kitchen light reflected in the puddles from my coat. I remember a spoon on the floor. I remember thinking the cereal had little colored marshmallows in it, and how stupid that was to notice while people were dying. I do not want to make this sound heroic. It was not. It was fast and ugly and loud. He dropped where he stood, his hands coming up too late. Marla screamed. I turned and shot her. Evan fell out of his chair trying to get under the table. I shot him too. Nora ran for the back door and slipped on the kitchen mat. She was still looking at me when I shot her. Then there was only the rain and the ringing in my ears. I checked the window. I checked the hallway. I moved like someone else was steering me. The gun felt too heavy and too light at the same time. My right hand hurt from how hard I held it. I kept expecting Joel to move. He did not. I kept expecting Marla to open her eyes and explain everything in that calm voice she had used at the park. She did not. Evan's foot stuck out from under the table. One sock was gray at the heel. I stared at it for longer than I should have. Caleb had socks like that. Every child has socks like that. Worn thin, never thrown away when they should be. That was the first crack in the anger. Not regret exactly. Something worse. Recognition. I stood in their kitchen with the gun in my hand and waited for something to happen inside me. Relief, maybe. Justice. Horror. Nothing came right away. My mind had gone flat again. I looked at their bodies and saw meat, clothes, hair, blood on tile. I saw the cereal bowl spinning slowly on its side until it stopped. I had killed a child. That fact reached me before anything else did. Evan had been part of it. He was in the photo. He knew something. Maybe he had done nothing. Maybe he had done worse. He had been 7 or 8 years old. He had sat with my son and played with blocks. I had made him sandwiches. I had killed him on his kitchen floor. I bent over the sink and threw up. When I was done, I rinsed my mouth with water and looked out the kitchen window. The backyard was empty. No neighbors had come running. The rain had swallowed the gunshots, or the houses were far enough apart, or nobody wanted to be involved. I do not know. I should have left. Instead, I searched the house. I do not know what I expected. A confession written on the wall. A room full of children. some answer that would make the kitchen behind me understandable. I moved through the rooms with the gun still in my hand. The house looked different now, but of course it was the same house. Family pictures, shoes by the door, bills on a side table, a half-finished laundry basket on the stairs. Upstairs, Nora's room had pale curtains and books stacked by the bed. There were drawings taped above her desk, faces mostly. Some were good, some were not finished. One was of a boy sitting in a chair. It might have been Caleb, or might have been someone else. I tore it down and stuffed it in my pocket without thinking. Evan's room had toys, a small bed, dinosaur sheets. Caleb's plastic robot was on the dresser. I picked it up. That was when I started crying. Not before. Not in the sewer. Not in the car. Not after the shots. A cheap plastic robot broke me. I held it against my chest and made sounds I did not know I could make. Then I heard something below me. A hum. At first I thought it was my own head. Then I realized it was coming through the floor. A low mechanical sound. A fan, maybe. Or a freezer. I went downstairs. The sound was louder near the hallway by the kitchen. There was a door there I had always thought was a pantry or closet. I had never opened it. It was locked. Joel's keys were in his pocket. I made myself get them. His eyes were open. I did not look at them longer than I had to. The third key worked. The door opened to a narrow set of basement stairs. The smell came up first. Bleach, damp concrete, and something old underneath. Something human. I stood at the top with the light switch under my fingers and thought of Caleb saying the basement was big and smelled like metal. I turned on the light. The stairs led down to a room larger than the house should have allowed. Maybe it ran under the garage too. The walls were concrete. The floor had a drain in the middle. There were shelves, plastic bins, a workbench, a freezer, a metal cabinet, and a row of hooks along one wall. Most of the room was clean. Too clean. The kind of clean that means work. A camera tripod stood folded in the corner. There was a chair bolted to the floor. I walked down because by then I was not capable of not walking down. On the workbench sat a photo album. It was black, thick, the kind with plastic sleeves. There was nothing written on the cover. I opened it. The first page showed a man I did not know. Middle-aged, heavy-set, tied to the same chair. His face was bruised. He was alive in the first picture, dead in the second. The family stood behind him in the first one. In the second, only Joel and Marla were there. Evan was younger. Nora looked maybe 8. On the white edge of each photo was writing. Numbers, letters, slashes, dots. Some looked like coordinates but wrong. Some had symbols I did not recognize. Not occult symbols. Nothing from a movie. More like private shorthand. A system. I turned the page. A woman in a waitress uniform. A teenage boy. An old man. A girl with braces. A young couple together, sitting side by side, holding hands because their wrists were tied together. People of all ages. Some pages had one person, some had 2 or 3. The same room, the same chair, sometimes different angles. The family changed over the years. Nora got older page by page. Evan grew from a toddler into the boy I knew. Marla's hair changed length. Joel's beard came and went. They had been doing it for years. I wanted to stop looking. but I kept turning pages. I think part of me was looking for a reason. There was none. There were only faces. Then I found Caleb. There were 4 pictures of him. In the first, he sat in the chair, scared but not badly hurt yet. His hands were tied. Marla was standing beside him with a hand on his shoulder. Joel stood behind him. Evan looked at the floor. Nora looked at the camera. The second was the same photo I had found in his jacket. The third was worse. The fourth was after. I closed the album and pressed both hands against it. I do not remember how long I stood there. When I could move again, I searched the basement. The metal cabinet held cleaning supplies, gloves, rolls of plastic, cord, tape, tools. I will not list them all. The freezer had meat wrapped in butcher paper. I did not open any of it after the first package. I am not a brave man. I had already seen too much. There were boxes of wallets, phones, watches, keys, jewelry, trophies, I suppose, or just proof. I found driver's licenses, school IDs, credit cards. Some were old enough that the photos had faded. I found a child's shoe that was not Caleb's. I found a pair of glasses with one lens cracked. One plastic bin was labeled with a strip of masking tape that said spare parts. Inside were chargers, old batteries, SIM cards, house keys, motel key cards, loose coins, a broken watch, a library card from another county, and a small silver ring with an inscription worn almost smooth. I picked up the ring and read what I could. Love always. The rest was scratched away. Another box held children's things. Not many, but enough. A hair clip shaped like a butterfly. A pencil case. A tiny stuffed bear with one eye missing. A school photo still sealed in its paper envelope. I looked at that envelope and wondered if some parent had ordered copies, waiting for a picture that never came home in a backpack. That was when I understood that Caleb was not the worst thing that had happened in that basement. He was the worst thing that had happened to me. There is a difference, and the difference made the room feel endless. On a shelf above the workbench were maps. Local maps, county maps, printed satellite images. Some had marks in red pen. Some marks were crossed out. Some had dates. Some had the same kind of code that was written on the photos. That was when I understood, or thought I understood. The numbers on the pictures were not just decoration. They had something to do with where the bodies went. Caleb's picture had a line of code. Caleb had been dumped in the storm drain. If I could compare the code to that location, maybe I could understand the system. Maybe the other pictures led to other bodies. The thought should not have mattered then. My son was dead. I had killed 4 people. The police would come eventually. There was no fixing any of it. But my mind grabbed onto the album like it was a piece of wood in deep water. Where were the others? Did their families still wonder? Did their bodies also have pictures in their pockets? Did someone find them? Did someone miss the meaning? Were there mothers and fathers and wives and sons who never got even the ugly answer I had? I put the album in a plastic shopping bag from under the sink. Then I filled another bag with cash from Joel's wallet, Marla's purse, and a metal box in the bedroom closet. I took a few pieces of jewelry before hating myself and taking them anyway. I took a flashlight, batteries, a rain poncho, canned food from the pantry, and a map from the basement. In their bedroom closet, behind hanging coats, I found a small safe. It was already open. Inside were envelopes of cash, passports, and a stack of instant photo cartridges still in their packaging. There was also a notebook with pages torn out. The pages that remained were blank except for pressure marks from writing on sheets above them. I held one page under the lamp and saw dents, numbers, short lines, a few initials maybe. I could not read enough to matter, so I took the notebook too. I found Marla's purse by the kitchen door. Her wallet had a picture of Evan and Nora when they were younger, both sitting on pumpkins. I stared at it for a long time. They looked like normal children. Nora had missing teeth. Evan was laughing. I put the wallet back. Then I took the cash from it. There are acts that make you feel dirty even after everything else has happened. Stealing from dead people should not have mattered compared to killing them. It did anyway. I wiped some surfaces because I had seen people do that on television, but I knew it was pointless. I had touched too much. I had left too much. I had walked through blood. My car was out front. Someone would know. I went back to the kitchen before I left. Nora was still by the back door. Her hand was curled against the floor. There was a thin bracelet on her wrist made of blue string. For a second, she looked like any kid who had fallen asleep in the wrong place. I almost said I was sorry. I did not. I drove home in the rain with the album on the passenger seat. My apartment looked smaller than it had that morning. Caleb's backpack lay in his room where I had left it. Water had leaked from it into the carpet. I packed like a person leaving for a weekend. Clothes, cash, an old camping stove, matches, 2 blankets, medicine, canned food, a can opener, my father's hunting knife, notebooks, pens. I took the framed picture of Caleb from the living room. In it, he was 6, holding up a pancake he had made with too much batter, proud as anything. I stood in his doorway for the last time. His room smelled like him. Soap, crayons, dust, little boy sweat. The smell was already fading. Or maybe I imagined that. I wanted to lie down on his bed and never get up. Instead, I left. There is a place in the woods north of town where my father used to take me when I was young. Not a proper cabin. More like a hunting shack built wrong and repaired badly over the years. It sits past an old logging road, behind a ridge, near a creek that dries out in late summer. Nobody uses it now. My father died before Caleb was born. I had not been there in years. I drove most of the way, then parked off the road behind a line of pines and covered the car with branches. It was a stupid hiding place, but I was not thinking like a criminal. I was thinking like a scared man who had run out of walls. I carried what I could to the shack in 2 trips. The rain made the trail slick. My boots sank into mud. By the time I got inside, I was shaking from cold and exhaustion. The first night there, I did not sleep at all. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and the gun across my knees. Every sound outside had a shape in my mind. A branch became a footstep. Rain dripping from the roof became someone whispering. Once, something moved under the shack, probably a raccoon, and I aimed the gun at the floor until my arms ached. Near morning, the clouds thinned and the woods turned gray. I stepped outside and threw up beside a stump. There was nothing in me but sour water. I stayed bent over for a while, watching ants move around my boot. That was the first time I said Caleb's name out loud after leaving town. Nothing answered. I was glad and disappointed. The shack smelled like mice and old wood. The roof leaked in 2 places. There was a small stove, a table, 2 chairs, and a narrow cot. Someone had left beer cans in the corner, but not recently. I set the album on the table and stared at it. I did not turn on my phone. I removed the battery, then realized phones do not work that way anymore, and laughed until I almost choked. I threw it into the creek the next morning anyway. I have been here since. I do not know how many days exactly. I could count, but I do not like the number. The first few days were all noise. Helicopters in my head. Police at the door in every snapped branch. Caleb's voice in the rain. I had nightmares when I slept. In them, he was still alive in the sewer, waiting for me to come back with a blanket. I listened to a small battery radio until the batteries died. They found the family 2 days after I left, according to the news. 4 dead in suspected homicide. Police searching for person of interest. Then they named me. They said I was considered armed and dangerous. They said anyone with information should call. They did not say what was in the basement. Maybe they had not found it yet. Maybe they had and were holding it back. Maybe they found Caleb too. I hope they found him. I hate that I left him. I hate that I let strangers carry him out of that place. I hate that I was not there. But if I had called, I would be in a cell now, and the album would be evidence in a room where I could not touch it. That is what I tell myself. I have spent the days studying the album. At first I could only open it for a few seconds at a time. I would look at one face, maybe 2, and then close it so hard the table shook. I tried to think of them as evidence. That helped a little. Evidence has edges. Evidence can be handled. Victims look back at you. I made rules for myself. 1 page at a time. Write down what is visible. Do not stare at injuries. Do not guess what they felt. Do not imagine voices. Age, clothing, background, family members present, code at the bottom, any date on the back. I wrote until my hand cramped. I used Caleb's school pencils because they were in the backpack, and then I hated myself for using them, and then I kept using them because they were all I had. Some victims appeared only once. Others had several pictures. A few had photos before and after death, as if whoever made the album wanted a complete record. The Voss family did not appear in every photo. Sometimes Joel was alone. Sometimes Marla. Sometimes the children were absent. Sometimes there were shadows in the frame that looked like other people just outside the camera's view. The album was not random cruelty kept for memory. It was cataloged. There are 78 people in it if I count the couple as 2, and the group of 3 as 3. 78 faces, not counting Caleb. Some photos have dates written on the backs. Some do not. Some names can be guessed from IDs in the boxes I took pictures of in my head, but did not bring. I was too stupid to bring the IDs. I brought the album and maps, but not the names. I keep remembering that and wanting to hit myself. The codes are not random. I am sure of that. Caleb's code is written as 4 groups. The first group has letters and numbers. The second looks like a distance. The third has 2 letters repeated in different order. The fourth is a string of numbers with a slash in it. I copied it into this notebook so many times the page tore. I will not write the exact code here in this copy. I wrote it elsewhere and hid it with the album. Part of me is afraid someone could use it wrong. Part of me is afraid I will make a mistake and ruin the only clue I have. That may be nonsense. Fear makes you careful in useless ways. I tried everything I knew, which was not much. I tried treating letters as numbers. I tried counting from the start of street names. I tried using Caleb's initials. I tried measuring from the blue house to the tire shop on the map. I tried using the distance from the park. I tried matching the slash number to drainage tunnel branches. I tried compass directions. North, south, east, west. Nothing gave me anything I trusted. Then I noticed 2 other photos with codes that shared Caleb's second group. One was the teenage boy. One was the waitress. They were years apart. Different rooms. Different seasons, judging by clothing. I marked them with torn pieces of tape. If the shared group meant a shared dump site, then 3 bodies might be in the same place. If it meant method or date or photographer, it meant something else entirely. This is how I spend my time now, building little theories and watching them fall apart. I went back in my memory to where I found him. The drain behind the tire shop, the curve in the tunnel, the side pipe. I marked it on the county map as best I could. Then I tried matching the code to the map grid. Nothing. I tried reading the numbers as coordinates. Nothing. I tried shifting letters. Nothing. I tried using the date he vanished. Nothing. I tried using his age. Nothing. I tried using the number of people in the family. Nothing. There are marks on the maps that might be dump sites, or hunting spots, or places they plan to use. Some match roads. Some sit in empty fields. Some are in the woods. One is near a reservoir. One is near the old quarry. I have not gone to any yet. I do not know if I am afraid of finding bodies or afraid of finding nothing. The strangest part is the photos in pockets. I keep coming back to that. The picture was in Caleb's jacket, not hidden well, protected from water, but easy to find. If the point was to leave evidence, why pose in the photo? If the point was to get caught, why do it for years and hide the album? If the point was a ritual, what did the location matter? Did every body carry a picture? Did every picture carry a code? Were the codes meant for someone else? I have started to think Marla and Joel were not the whole thing. I do not have proof. I know how that sounds. A man hiding in the woods after killing 4 people starts seeing a larger evil because the smaller one is too stupid to accept. Maybe that is all it is. But the album is too organized. The maps are too many. Some of the photos show rooms that are not the basement. At least 5 were taken somewhere else. One shows a concrete wall painted green. One shows wood paneling. One looks like the inside of a storage unit. In 2 pictures, there is a hand at the edge of the frame that does not belong to anyone in the family. There may have been others. Maybe there still are. Sometimes I think that is why they put the photo in Caleb's pocket. Not as a mistake. Not even as a ritual. As a way to feed the system. Let a body be found. Let grief point in one direction. Let police focus on one family, one house, one story. The rest stays buried. Then I remember I shot them before asking a single question. I killed the only people who could have told me. That thought sits with me all day. I am not sorry they are dead. I have tried to be. I know I should be, at least about the children. Evan and Nora were born into that house. Maybe they were victims too. Maybe Nora cried in the photo because she hated what was happening. Maybe Evan looked at the floor because he could not stand to see Caleb hurt. Maybe they had no choice. Maybe they had choices. Maybe everyone has fewer choices than we think. It does not change what I did. I see Nora's face more than Joel's. Joel was easy to hate. Marla too, because of her hand on Caleb's shoulder and the way she opened the door for me like she had not watched him suffer. But Nora was a child. Older than Caleb, yes, but still a child. She might have been waiting for someone to stop it. She might have been waiting for someone like me. And I stopped it by killing her. There is no clean place to stand in this story. The police are probably closer now. Maybe they found my car. Maybe they found the road. Maybe they already searched this shack once and missed where I hid the album under the floorboard. I go outside only when I have to. I eat cold beans and crackers. I drink creek water after boiling it when I have fuel, and straight when I do not. My stomach hurts most of the time. My hands shake. I smell bad. I talk to Caleb's picture. I have money, but money is useless if you cannot walk into a store. There is a small town farther north. I went there once at dusk and bought food from a gas station with cash, wearing an old hat and keeping my head down. The cashier barely looked at me. Still, I have not gone back. Every car on the road feels like police. Every dog barking means someone found me. Every plane overhead makes me freeze under the trees. On the way back from that gas station, I saw my face on a newspaper in a vending box outside a laundromat. The picture was from a company picnic years ago. I had Caleb on my shoulders, but they had cropped him out. Only my face remained, smiling like an idiot in a life that was already gone. The headline called me a suspect in the Voss family killings. Below that, smaller words mentioned the search for my missing son. Missing. Still missing. That meant either they had not found him, or they were not telling the public. I stood there in the rain with a bag of canned soup in one hand and almost fed quarters into the box to read about myself. A car turned into the lot and I ran. I dropped one can in the road and left it there. I am writing this because I need the facts somewhere outside my head. My name is David Hale. My son was Caleb Hale. He was 7 years old. He liked drawing impossible machines. He was missing one front tooth. He was kind to a shy boy at a park, and that is how they got him. He hated peas but would eat them if I mixed them with mashed potatoes. He slept with one foot out from under the blanket. He called elevators tiny moving rooms. He once cried because he stepped on a snail after rain and asked me if snails had families. He saved the marshmallows in his cereal for last. He believed I could fix anything because I owned a toolbox. I am writing these things because a child should not become only the worst thing that happened to him. If this is found by police, write that down somewhere. Not just victim, not just missing boy, not just remains recovered. Caleb Hale was a person. He was here. He mattered before he was evidence. The family was Joel, Marla, Evan, and Nora Voss. They lived in the blue house on Briar Lane, near the creek. They told police Caleb left their house. That was a lie. They took him to the basement. They hurt him. They photographed him. They killed him. They dumped him in the storm drain behind the old tire shop off Mercer Road. I found him there on a heavy rainy day. I found the photo in his jacket pocket. I went to their house and killed them. I found the album in their basement. If you are reading this, you may already know some of that. Maybe the police found the house and the basement and made sense of it. Maybe they called me a murderer, which is true, and a grieving father, which is also true. Maybe the news argued about which mattered more. I do not care. What matters is the album. I have hidden it near this notebook. Not in the same place, but close enough. Look under the loose floorboard beneath the table for the map. The album is wrapped in 2 black trash bags and buried under the flat stone behind the shack, the one with moss on the north side. If animals have not gotten to it, it should still be there. Do not give up on the codes. I have found nothing so far, but they mean something. I know they do. Start with Caleb's location. Use the tire shop drain as the key, if there is a key. Compare it to the numbers on his photo. Look at the maps. Check the quarry, the reservoir, the old mill road, and the field behind St. Agnes Cemetery. I circled the places that seemed possible, but I could be wrong about all of them. I keep asking myself where the other corpses are dumped. I keep asking if they also had pictures in their pockets. I keep asking if some poor person found a photo years ago and thought it was just cruelty, not a map. I keep asking how many families were trained to live without answers, while the answers sat in plastic sleeves in a basement. There is one photo I cannot stop thinking about. A man in a delivery uniform, maybe 30, with a tattoo of a bird on his wrist. In the picture, he is looking slightly past the camera, not at Joel or Marla. His expression is not fear exactly. It is recognition, like he knows the person taking the picture, like he expected someone else and got that room instead. That photo has a code almost identical to one on a map mark near the old quarry. I told myself for 3 days I would go there. I packed a bag twice. I checked the gun. I filled a bottle from the creek. Both times I made it as far as the ridge and stopped. The quarry is too open. There are houses on the road nearby. If the police are looking for me, that is the kind of place they might watch. If someone else is looking for the album, that is the kind of place they might return to. Or I am a coward. Both can be true. I do not know why I need to find them. It will not bring Caleb back. It will not make me less guilty. It will not clean the kitchen floor or put air back into Nora's lungs. It will not change the fact that I left my son in dirty water and ran toward revenge instead of help. Maybe I need the dead to be counted. Maybe I need one useful thing to come from what I did. Maybe I am just afraid to stop moving. Because when I stop, I see Caleb in that chair. There is not much food left. The rain comes through the roof at night. I have started hearing things that may not be there. Yesterday I heard a child laughing near the creek. But when I went outside, there was only wind moving through wet leaves. I know what grief can do. I know what guilt can do. I am not claiming ghosts. I am saying a man alone with this much loss cannot always trust his senses. 2 nights ago, I woke up sure someone was standing outside the shack. I could feel them there the way you feel someone looking at the back of your head. I stayed still on the cot, barely breathing. The moon was bright enough to show the outline of the window. Nothing moved. Then the floor creaked under the table. Inside. I sat up with the gun in both hands. The shack was empty. The album lay where I had left it, wrapped in a towel. One of the notebook pages had slid to the floor, probably from the wind through the wall gaps. I told myself that. I still slept outside until morning with my back against a tree. The next day, I found a footprint in the mud near the flat stone behind the shack. It could have been mine. The rain had softened the edges. I spent an hour comparing it to my boot and learned nothing. I moved the album anyway. Then I moved it back because the new hiding place seemed worse. This is what I have become. a man hiding from police, from murderers who may not exist, and from the sound of paper falling on a floor. The gun is on the table while I write. There are rounds left. I counted them this morning and then hated myself for counting. I am scared of prison. I am scared of being found by the police and put in a room where people ask me why I did it, as if the answer matters. I am scared of the others, if there are others. I am scared that the Voss family were only one branch of something older and wider, and that by taking the album, I took something they will want back. Most of all, I am scared that I will never understand any of it. That may be the worst part after losing him, not knowing. The human mind hates a hole. It will fill it with anything. Ritual, network, madness, evil. But maybe the truth is simpler. Maybe they were just people who liked hurting people. Maybe they wrote codes because it amused them. Maybe the photos in pockets were jokes. Maybe Caleb died because I trusted a woman with tired eyes and a quiet boy in a green rain jacket. I do not know how to live with that. So far I have found nothing, and whatever I find, I will write it in here for whoever finds it. If you are reading this, then I have probably killed myself from grief, fear, the police being after me, lack of money and food, or some mix of all of it. I also probably did not care enough to hide this document well enough, and that is why you can read this now. You should find the photo album somewhere near if you look hard enough for it. Please look. Please count them. Please take my son out of the dark if nobody has yet. And if you find the places marked by the codes, do not go alone.